in the orbital academy of Xenos Prime, where stars blinked like distant watchfires and the hum of engines never ceased. A new cadet arrived without announcement or escort. She stepped off the transport shuttle alone, her boots silent against the metal ramp, her uniform crisp but unmarked. No name tag, no species insignia, not even a rank stripe. Just a hood pulled low over silver hair and eyes that seemed to hold whole galaxies behind them. The other cadets noticed her right away, not because she was loud or flashy, but because she was still, in a place full of shouting drills, clattering gear, and the constant chatter of a dozen alien tongues. Her silence was louder than any alarm. Her name, when she finally gave it during roll call in tactical theory class, was Lila, simple, unadorned, no surname, no origin, just Lila. She sat in the back row, spine straight, hands folded on the desk. Beside her, coiled like a living bracelet around her left wrist, was a small creature no bigger than a house cat. It had smooth obsidian scales that shimmered with faint blue veins, wings folded tight against its body, and eyes that glowed like embers in a dying fire. Most assumed it was some kind of exotic pet, maybe a genetically altered lizard or a bio-companion from a fringe colony. They were wrong, but no one knew it yet. The Academy trained the best and brightest from across the Galactic Coalition. Humans. Krellians with their armored hides and four-fingered hands. Slender Virellans who communicated through scent and light. Even a few stoic Xanthari whose skin changed color with their mood. They were all here to learn strategy, diplomacy, and combat. To become officers who could hold the fragile peace together. But peace was a luxury and pride ran deep, especially among the Krellian cadets, who saw themselves as the strongest, the most disciplined, the true backbone of the Coalition fleet. 3 of them, Torvak, Gresh, and Nyla, had taken an immediate dislike to Lila. She never spoke unless spoken to. She never joined drills unless ordered. She never flinched at the simulated explosions in the combat dome or the sudden gravity shifts in zero-G training. Worst of all, she never showed fear. And in their eyes, that was either arrogance or deception. One afternoon, after a grueling session in the neural combat sim, they cornered her in the corridor outside the theory wing. The hallway was nearly empty, the overhead lights casting long shadows. Torvak, broad-shouldered and scarred from academy brawls, stepped in front of her. Gresh and Nyla flanked her from the sides, blocking escape. "Hey, Ghost," Torvak said, his voice rough like grinding stone. "You think you're too good to talk to the rest of us?" Lila didn't look up. She adjusted the strap of her datapad, her movements calm, unhurried. "We asked you a question," Nyla snapped, her claws clicking against the wall. Still silence. Gresh leaned in, his breath hot. Maybe she's not even real. Maybe she's a spy, or a ghost drone sent by the Virellans to watch us. At that, Lila finally lifted her head. Her eyes met Torvak's, then Gresh's, then Nyla's. There was no anger in them, no fear, just a quiet, unnerving clarity, like she was seeing not just their faces, but the shape of their thoughts. She tilted her head slightly, as if considering something far more interesting than their posturing. "One at a time or all together." The words were soft, almost gentle, but they landed like a detonation. Torvak laughed, a harsh bark. "What, you think you can fight us? You're barely bigger than that lizard on your arm." The creature on her wrist stirred. Its eyes flickered brighter. A low hum began to vibrate from its chest. So quiet at first it felt like a trick of the ears. Lila didn't move. She just waited. "Fine," Torvak growled. "All together, then. Teach the silent one some respect." He lunged first, aiming to grab her shoulder and spin her around. But before his fingers touched her uniform, the air changed. The hum from the creature rose in pitch, becoming a resonant thrum that made the floor plates tremble. The overhead lights flickered. Then, with a sharp crack, every glass panel in the corridor, the observation windows, the display cases, even the reinforced lenses of the security cameras, shattered inward in a rain of glittering shards. The Krellians stumbled back, shielding their faces. Alarms blared. Red emergency lights pulsed. Smoke curled from the ceiling vents where wiring had overloaded, and Lila stood untouched in the center of it all, her hood still up, her expression unreadable. The creature Ember, though no one knew its name yet, uncoiled slowly from her wrist. It stretched its wings, not large but edged with filaments that sparked with static energy. It let out a sound, not quite a growl, not quite a song, and the very air seemed to warp around it. Torvak raised his fists, but his confidence was gone. Gresh backed into the wall. Nyla hissed, her claws extended, but she didn't advance. From down the hall, boots pounded against metal. Instructors and security officers rushed toward the chaos, stun batons drawn, comms crackling with confusion. Lila didn't wait for them. She turned, walked calmly through the broken glass, and disappeared into a service hatch that hadn't been on any academy map. By the time the command staff arrived, she was gone. Only scorched floor tiles remained where her boots had stood, and a single feather, long silver-white, pulsing faintly with warmth, lay on the ground near the shattered glass. Commander Vega, the Academy's stern human leader, arrived within minutes. She surveyed the damage with narrowed eyes. No injuries, thankfully, but the structural sensors showed localized gravity distortions and energy spikes that defied known physics. When she picked up the feather, it dissolved into light in her palm. Who is she really? Vega asked no one in particular. No one had an answer. In the days that followed, whispers spread through Xenos Prime like wildfire. Some said Lila was a rogue AI given flesh. Others claimed she was a remnant of a dead civilization, returned to test the Coalition. A few even whispered the old myths of the Silthari, the Starwalkers who rode dragons through the void and sealed away horrors too terrible to name. But those were just stories, bedtime tales for alien children. Lila returned to class as if nothing had happened. She sat in the same seat, wore the same blank expression, and kept Ember coiled around her wrist like a secret. The Krellian cadets avoided her. Instructors watched her closely but said nothing. And the Academy's central AI, usually flawless, began logging anomalies whenever she entered certain sectors. Power drains, sensor ghosts, echoes in the comms that sounded like distant singing. But Lila gave no explanations. She asked no questions. She simply existed, a quiet storm in human form, waiting. And Ember watched everyone with eyes that remembered things no one else did. Far below the Academy's main decks, in a sealed maintenance tunnel no cadet was supposed to know about, Lila paused one night. She placed her palm against a wall panel that looked ordinary, but hummed with a frequency only she could hear. The metal slid open, revealing a chamber lined with ancient glyphs that glowed when she approached. In the center floated a sphere of liquid light, swirling with images of burning worlds and silent fleets. She whispered something in a language with no words, only breath and resonance. The sphere pulsed in response. "The veil is thin," she murmured. Ember chirped softly, nuzzling her cheek. "They will come soon." Above them, the Academy slept, unaware that the quiet girl in the back row wasn't just a student. She was the last guardian, and her war had already begun. After the incident in the corridor, the Academy fell into a strange hush. No one spoke openly about Lila, but eyes followed her wherever she went. Instructors adjusted their lesson plans to avoid putting her in group exercises. Cadets gave her a wide berth in the mess hall. Even the usually rowdy Krellians kept their distance, though Torvak was seen grinding his teeth during weapons drill, his glare fixed on the back of Lila's hood. But not everyone was afraid. Cadet Morgan watched from the shadows. She was human, small for a fighter pilot track with sharp eyes and a mind that never stopped working. While others saw silence, Morgan saw pattern. While others saw mystery, she saw missing data. And in her view, every mystery had a thread, if you knew where to pull. Morgan had grown up on old Earth, raised by a grandmother who collected forgotten histories and broken star charts. She learned early that silence often meant something had been erased. So when Lila appeared with no file, no origin, and a pet that shattered glass with a hum, Morgan didn't flinch. She got curious. She started digging, not through official channels that would trigger alerts, but through the Academy's forgotten corners. The deep archives, the maintenance logs, the backup servers that hadn't been updated in decades. Most cadets never went there. The air was stale, the lights flickered, and the terminals ran on ancient code that barely spoke to modern systems. But Morgan loved it. It felt like archaeology. For 3 nights, she combed through corrupted files and fragmented transmissions. Most were routine: supply orders, drill schedules, medical reports. Then on the 4th night, she found something odd. A single log entry from over 200 years ago, buried under layers of encryption so old it should have been unreadable. Yet it opened for her as if waiting. The entry was labeled Veil Protocol, classified Tier Omega. Her fingers hovered over the keys. She glanced at the door. No one was coming. She pressed enter. The screen filled with text, then images, grainy, faded, but unmistakable. Tall figures with silver skin and eyes like polished moonstones stood on the hull of a ship shaped like a crescent. Beside them, creatures of scale and flame hovered in vacuum. Wings spread wide, breathing not fire but streams of light. The caption read, "Sylthari Fleet engages Void Weavers at the edge of Sector 9. All contact lost after Veil activation." Morgan's breath caught. She'd heard the name Sylthari before in her grandmother's stories. They were said to be the first spacefarers, older than the Coalition, older than humanity's first radio signal. They didn't build weapons. They wove reality, and their companions, the Star Dragons, could bend gravity with a thought. According to legend, the Sylthari vanished during a great war, sealing themselves and their enemies behind something called the Veil, a barrier between dimensions. No one knew if it was real or myth, but here it was in an official Academy log marked as real, and then she saw it, a side note almost hidden. Biological signature matches unknown cadet designation Lila. Recommend immediate quarantine and neural scan. The entry ended there. No follow-up. No action taken, as if someone had seen it and decided to forget. Morgan's heart pounded. She copied the file to a shielded drive, wiped her terminal, and left the archive without a sound. The next day she watched Lila during environmental survival class. They were in the greenhouse dome, a massive chamber filled with alien flora and artificial weather systems. Rain misted from the ceiling, and the air smelled of damp soil and ozone. Lila stood near a cluster of glowing ferns. Ember curled around her neck like a living scarf. She wasn't listening to the instructor. She was watching the rain, her expression distant, as if seeing something beyond the dome's curved glass. Morgan approached slowly. Hands open, no threat. "You're not from here." "Are you?" Morgan said, her voice low. Lila didn't turn, but she didn't walk away either. Most people would have denied it, Morgan continued. Or lied, but you don't lie. You just stay quiet. Still silence. But Ember lifted its head, eyes fixed on Morgan. "I found something," Morgan said. "About the Sylthari. About the Veil." At that, Lila finally looked at her. Her silver eyes held no surprise, only a deep, weary knowing. "You should not have looked," Lila said softly. "Why not?" "Because knowing makes you a target." Before Morgan could ask what she meant, the dome's lights flickered. The rain stopped mid-fall. Every plant in the chamber seemed to lean toward Lila, as if drawn by an invisible tide. Ember let out a low warning trill. "Something is coming," Lila whispered. "Not ships, not soldiers. Something older." Morgan felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mist. She believed her now. That night, systems across Xenos Prime began to fail, not all at once but in strange, scattered ways. Navigation arrays spun wildly without input. Food synthesizers produced ash instead of protein. In the medbay, stored memories from neural backups played on loop, voices screaming in languages no one recognized. The command staff blamed solar flares or a virus, but Morgan knew better. She met Lila again, this time in the observation spire, a narrow tower that jutted from the Academy's outer hull, offering a clear view of the stars. They stood in silence for a long time, watching the void. "The veil is breaking," Lila finally said. "The seal is old. It was never meant to last forever. Who sealed it? We did. The Sylthari. My people and the Void Weavers. They're what's on the other side worse. They are the absence that hungers for presence. They wear memories like skins. They mimic voices to lure the lost. They do not conquer. They consume." Morgan swallowed. "And you're here to stop them?" "I am here because the Veil chose me. Ember and I are the last. The others faded into the fabric of the seal. I remain because the rift needs a hand to hold it closed. So why come to an academy full of cadets? Because the Veil does not care about rank or species. It cares about unity. And your kind, human and alien together, might be the first in centuries to remember how to stand as one." Morgan looked at her. Really looked. Lila wasn't just mysterious. She was grieving. Every word carried the weight of a dead civilization. "What do we do, Watch? Listen. Trust no voice that comes from the dark without a face, and prepare." As if on cue, a red alert blared through the spire, not the usual drill tone. This was deeper, slower, like a funeral drum. Commander Vega's voice crackled over the comms. "All cadets to secure stations. Unknown energy signature detected at the edge of sensor range. Repeat, unknown signature." Lila's eyes narrowed. "They are testing the walls." Ember uncoiled fully now. wings stretching wide enough to brush both walls of the spire. Its glow intensified, casting long shadows that danced like spirits. Morgan felt fear. Yes, but also something else. Purpose. "I'm with you," she said. Lila gave the smallest nod. Then she placed a hand on the glass. Outside, the stars seemed to dim as if holding their breath. In the days that followed, the Academy tightened security. Patrols doubled, comms were encrypted, but the malfunctions grew worse. Cadets reported hearing whispers in empty corridors. Some swore they saw reflections in mirrors that weren't their own. Paranoia spread like mold. Torvak accused a Varellan cadet of sabotage. The Varellans accused the Zenthari. Humans were split. Some wanted to evacuate, others wanted to fight. Commander Vega struggled to hold the peace, but even she looked tired, her eyes shadowed with doubt. Only Morgan and Lila moved with calm. Morgan used her access to track the anomalies, mapping them like a disease spreading through the station's nervous system. Lila walked the halls at night, Ember at her side, humming softly. Wherever they went, the disturbances lessened. It was as if her presence soothed the station's fear. One evening, Morgan found a hidden door behind a false wall in engineering. It wasn't on any schematic. The lock was organic, pulsing faintly. When Lila touched it, it opened like a flower. Inside was a chamber older than the Academy itself. The walls were carved with Silthari script, glowing with soft blue light. In the center stood a pedestal holding a sphere of swirling mist. Images flickered within it. Burning cities, silent fleets, a great tier in space stitched shut by threads of light. "This is the heart of the Veil's echo," Lila said. The Academy was built over a fracture point. They did not know. Or perhaps they forgot. Who built it? Your ancestors. Unknowingly. They chose this place because it felt quiet, peaceful. They did not realize they were building on a wound. Morgan stared at the sphere. Can it be healed only if the living remember how to stand together? The veil is not a wall. It is a promise. And promises break when no one believes in them. As she spoke, the sphere dimmed. A hairline crack appeared across its surface. "They are closer now," Lila said. "How much time do we have?" "Not enough." Morgan took a deep breath. "Then we make more." Lila looked at her. Really looked for the first time. In Morgan's eyes, she saw not fear, but fire. Not doubt, but determination. "Perhaps," Lila said softly, "there is still hope." Outside, the stars watched, and far beyond them, in the dark between galaxies, something stirred. It had heard the crack, and it was hungry. Tensions in the Academy reached a breaking point. The strange malfunctions had stopped being oddities and started feeling like warnings. Lights flickered with no cause. Doors sealed themselves during drills. In the mess hall, a cadet's meal turned to gray dust before their eyes. Worst of all, voices began echoing in empty rooms, familiar voices calling names, begging for help. Some cadets swore they heard their dead siblings. Others heard their own voices, whispering secrets they'd never told anyone. Paranoia spread faster than any virus. Accusations flew. Torvak and his Krellian group claimed the Varellans were using scent-based mind tricks. The Varellans accused the Zenthari of shifting their skin tones to mimic others and spy. Even humans turned on each other. Cadet Dana, usually calm and steady, nearly came to blows with another human over a misplaced data chip that neither could explain. Commander Vega called an emergency assembly in the Grand Amphitheater, a wide circular chamber with tiered seats and a central podium lit by soft white panels. Every cadet was required to attend. Security stood at every exit, stun rods in hand. The air was thick with unease. Vega stepped onto the podium, her uniform sharp, her face unreadable. She did not waste time on pleasantries. "We are under no external attack," she announced. "No enemy fleet approaches. No known faction has declared war. Yet our station is falling apart from within. I will not allow fear to destroy what we have built." Her eyes swept the crowd. Then she turned to the back row. "Lila, step forward." All eyes turned. Lila rose slowly. Ember coiled around her forearm, its glow dimmed to a soft pulse. She walked to the center without hesitation, her steps quiet but sure. "You arrived with no file, no origin, no clearance," Vega said. "You possess abilities that defy Academy science. Your presence coincides with every anomaly we've recorded. Explain yourself." Lila did not look at the commander. She looked at the cadets, at Torvak's clenched jaw, at Morgan's steady gaze, at Dana's worried frown. "I am not your enemy," Lila said. But I'm not your student either. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Then who are you? Someone shouted. Before Lila could answer, the overhead lights died. Not just dimmed, vanished. The only light came from emergency strips along the floor and the faint glow of Ember's scales. A low hum filled the air, deeper than sound, vibrating in bones. Then the walls began to bleed, not blood. Dark tendrils of shadow, oozing from the seams between panels, curling like smoke. They pulsed with a rhythm that matched no known heartbeat. Cadets scrambled back, shouting, tripping over benches. Vega drew her sidearm. Everyone stay calm, but calm was gone. The shadows thickened, forming shapes, faces, hands, fragments of uniforms. One tendril stretched toward Torvak, whispering in his mother's voice. Another reached for a Varellan cadet, mimicking their lost bondmate. Lila stepped into the center of the chaos. She raised her free hand, palm outward. Stop, she said. The word was not loud, but it cut through the noise like a blade. The shadows recoiled, hissing. They are not real. Lila said to the crowd. They wear your memories to feed your fear. Do not listen. Ember spread its wings fully now, no longer the size of a cat but of a large bird, its body radiating warmth and light. The shadows shrank further, writhing as if burned. But then from the ceiling a new voice spoke. It was Vega's voice, but smoother, colder. You brought this upon us, Lila. You are the breach. Every head turned. Commander Vega stood on the podium, stunned, because the voice had not come from her. The real Vega raised her weapon. That is not me. The shadows swirled together, forming a figure, tall, armored, with Vega's face but eyes like voids. It smiled. We are the echo of what you forget, it said. And you have forgotten so much. Panic erupted. Cadets bolted for the exits. Security fired stun pulses, but the bolts passed through the shadow vision like mist. Lila did not move. She closed her eyes, took a breath, and began to sing. It was not a song of words, but of tone and resonance, low at first, then rising, weaving through the air like threads of light. Ember joined her, its hum harmonizing with her voice. The chamber trembled. Cracks of golden light appeared in the floor, spreading outward. Wherever the light touched, the shadows dissolved with a shriek. The false Vega flickered, its form unraveling. It reached for Lila one last time, whispering, You cannot hold the veil alone. Then it vanished. Silence returned. The lights flickered back on. The walls were clean. No tendrils, no echoes. Only shaken cadets, wide-eyed and breathing hard. Vega lowered her weapon. She looked at Lila, not with suspicion now, but with dawning understanding. You're not here to learn, she said. You're here to guard. Lila nodded once. The veil is failing, she said. What you saw was only a probe, a taste. The true weavers are still beyond the rift, but they are testing. And if they find weakness, she did not finish. She did not need to. Vega turned to the crowd. All cadets, return to your quarters. No drills, no classes. Just rest and think. As the cadets filed out, many glanced back at Lila, not with fear now, but with something new. Wonder, doubt, hope. Morgan stayed behind. So did Donna. Even Torvak lingered near the door, his arms crossed, his expression unreadable. You said the veil needs unity, Morgan said quietly. What does that mean? It means the seal was never meant to be held by one, Lila replied. It was woven by many. Silthari, dragons, and allies from 100 worlds. When they vanished, the pact broke. The veil weakened. To restore it, the living must choose to stand together, not as Krellian or human or Varellan, but as one. Dana frowned. How do we do that? By remembering that fear divides but courage unites. Torvak finally stepped forward. His voice was rough but not angry. You could have killed us in the corridor. You didn't. Why? Because violence solves nothing against the Weavers. They feed on conflict. The only weapon that harms them is harmony. Torvak studied her for a long moment. Then he gave a single, sharp nod. I don't trust you, but I believe you. It was the closest to an apology he would ever give. That night, Vega called a private meeting in her office. Only Lila, Morgan, Dana, and Torvak were invited. The commander had reviewed the deep archive files Morgan had uncovered. She had also checked old coalition records. There were whispers, buried, redacted, but there, of a race that once kept the dark at bay. We were told they were myth, Vega said. A cautionary tale. But you're real, I am the last, Lila said. Ember is the last dragon. Together, we are the final thread. And if the veil falls, Then the weavers enter this reality. They do not destroy. They hollow. They take your memories, your faces, your voices, and wear them until nothing of you remains. Worlds will not burn. They will forget they ever existed. A heavy silence settled. "What do you need from us?" Vega asked. "A choice," Leela said. "When the time comes, you must choose to stand with me, not because I am strong, but because together, you are." The next morning, the academy changed. Drills resumed, but now cadets from different species trained side by side. Krellians helped Virellans calibrate scent filters. Humans shared rations with Zenthari. Even in the mess hall, tables that were once divided now held mixed groups. Lila watched from the edges, saying little, but Ember's glow grew brighter each day. Then, without warning, the station shook. Not a tremor, a deep groaning lurch that sent cadets stumbling. Alarms blared. Not red, but black, a signal no one had ever heard. The comms filled with static, then a single word, spoken in 1,000 voices at once. Remember, on the main view screen in the command center, space itself seemed to tear. Not a ship, not a rift, a wound, and through it, something vast and shapeless began to press forward. Vega's voice cut through the panic. All hands to defense stations. Seal bulkheads, activate emergency protocols. But Lila was already moving. She ran, not to the armory, not to the bridge, but to the observation spire. Morgan followed. So did Dana and Torvak. They found her at the highest window, hands pressed against the glass, Ember hovering beside her, wings spread wide. "They're coming," Lila whispered. "What do we do?" Torvak asked, his voice tight. "We give them a reason to turn back." She turned to them, her silver eyes blazing with quiet fire. "Stand with me," and one by one, they did. Outside, the stars held their breath, and the war for memory began. The station trembled as the tear in space widened. It was not a hole in the void, but a wound in reality itself. Edges frayed with black lightning, center swirling with shapes that hurt to look at. The Void Weavers were not coming in ships. They were coming through the cracks in the world. Panic surged through Xenos Prime. Cadets scrambled to battle stations, but weapons did nothing. Energy beams passed through the approaching darkness like light through smoke. Shields flickered and died. Even the Academy's heaviest turrets fell silent, their systems overwhelmed by a signal that was not sound, not data but pure absence in the chaos. Lila stood unmoved in the observation spire, her hand still pressed to the glass. Ember hovered beside her, wings spread, its glow now a steady white flame that pushed back the creeping shadows along the walls. Morgan, Dana and Torvak stood behind her, breathing hard, eyes fixed on the nightmare beyond the viewport. "What do we do now?" Morgan asked, her voice tight. "We find the heart," Lila said. "The heart, the place where the veil first touched this station, where the fracture is weakest and strongest." "But where is it?" Leela turned, her silver eyes locking onto Dana. "You felt it before. In engineering. Behind the false wall." Dana's eyes widened. "The chamber with the glowing sphere, it is not just a chamber," Lila said. "It is an anchor, and we must reach it before the Weavers do." They ran, through shaking corridors, past sparking consoles and cadets shouting in confusion. The air grew colder the deeper they went, and the lights dimmed as if the station itself was losing hope. Whispers followed them, voices of lost friends, of parents long gone, of versions of themselves that might have been. Torvak growled and covered his ears. Dana kept her eyes forward. Morgan held her breath. When they reached engineering, the false wall was already open, not by Lila's touch this time, but by something else. Black tendrils coiled around the edges, pulsing like veins. The chamber beyond was dark, the glowing glyphs on the walls flickering weakly. Ember hissed, its light flaring brighter as it flew ahead, clearing the tendrils with pulses of heat. Inside, the sphere of mist hovered above the pedestal, but it was cracked now, deep fissures running through its surface, leaking strands of shadow that curled toward the ceiling like smoke. "They are trying to unmake it," Lila said, stepping forward. "If the anchor falls, the veil collapses everywhere." "Can we stop them?" Morgan asked. "Not with force, only with unity." She turned to the 3 cadets. "Each of you must choose, not for your species, not for your pride, but for all that is." Torvak stepped forward first. "I stood against you once. Now I stand with you, for my people, for yours." He placed his hand on the pedestal. The glyphs beneath his palm flared red. Dana followed. My grandmother used to say the stars remember what we forget. I choose to remember. Her hand joined his. The glyphs glowed green. Morgan took a breath. I came looking for answers, but what I found was a friend. And a purpose. She placed her hand on the stone. Blue light spread from her touch. Lila looked at them, her expression softening for the first time. Then she raised her own hand, and ember landed gently on her shoulder, its light merging with hers. The moment her skin touched the pedestal, the chamber erupted in light. Golden threads shot from the sphere, weaving through the air, stitching the cracks shut. The whispers outside turned to screams, then silence. The tendrils shriveled and vanished. For a moment the station stilled, but then the sphere dimmed again. It is not enough, Lila whispered. The anchor needs more. It needs a host from every people aboard. Morgan's heart sank. There are dozens of species here. We can't gather them all in time. We do not need all, Lila said. Only one from each. A willing soul. A true choice. But who will believe us, Torvak said. After everything, who will trust an elf woman and her dragon? Someone must try, Dana said. They looked at each other. Then without another word, they ran back toward the central hub. The academy was in chaos. Cadets huddled in groups, some praying, some fighting, some simply waiting for the end. Vega stood on the command deck, barking orders that no one could follow. The tear in space now filled half the main view screen, and shapes were forming within it. Tall, shifting figures made of stolen memories and hollow voices. Leela climbed onto a maintenance platform in the central atrium, ember glowing beside her like a small sun. She did not shout. She simply spoke, and her voice carried through the station as if the walls themselves were listening. Listen, she said. The enemy does not want your lives. It wants your names. Your faces, your love. It will wear them until nothing of you remains. But you can stop it. Not with weapons, with choice. A Varellan cadet stepped forward, antennae trembling. How place your hand on the old stone beneath engineering. Give your will to the veil, not as Varellan, not as human, but as one who remembers what it means to be alive. Silence. Then a Zenthari cadet, skin shifting from fear gray to calm blue, nodded slowly. I will go. Others followed. A Krellian elder from the instructor corps, a young human medic, a quiet reptilian from the navigation wing. One by one, they made their way to the hidden chamber, guided by Morgan and Dana. Torvak stayed with Lila, watching the tear grow. They are coming through, he said. Soon, Lila replied. In the chamber below, the pedestal now held 12 hands, each from a different species, each glowing with a different light. The sphere pulsed stronger, the cracks sealing further, but it was still fragile. We need one more, Morgan said, looking around. Someone from the outer colonies, someone no one expected. Then a small figure stepped from the shadows, a cadet from the silent moon of Kessar, rarely seen, never heard. They had no voice box, communicating only through hand signs. Now they placed their hand on the stone without hesitation. The sphere blazed above in the atrium. Lila felt it. The veil stirred. Not fully healed, but awake. It is time, she said. Ember flew to her, growing larger with every beat of its wings. By the time it hovered before her, it was the size of a shuttlecraft, scales gleaming like polished stars, eyes burning with ancient fire. What are you going to do? Torvak asked. What must be done? She climbed onto Ember's back, her hood falling back to reveal her pointed ears and silver hair, now glowing with the same light as the dragon. To the reactor core, she said. They soared through the station's central shaft, past stunned cadets and flickering lights. The reactor core was the heart of Xenos Prime, a massive chamber where antimatter swirled in magnetic fields, powering everything from life support to shields. It was also the closest point to the station's original foundation, where the Siltheri fracture ran deepest. Lila landed on the control gantry. Below, the core pulsed with blue energy. Ember will merge with the core, she said. His essence will become the new flame of the veil. But the ritual requires a final anchor, a living mind to guide the light. You, Morgan said, horrified. You'll die. I will become part of the seal. Lila corrected gently. Not gone, just changed. No, Dana whispered. Yes? Lila said. It is the only way. She looked at them. Morgan, Dana, Torvak, and the others gathering below. You have shown that unity is still possible. That is enough. Ember lowered its head, nuzzling her cheek one last time. Then Lila stepped to the edge of the gantry, raised her arms, and began to sing. The song was older than stars. It spoke of light and memory, of promises kept across eons. Ember roared, not in pain but in harmony, and dove into the core. Light exploded, not fire, not heat. Pure white radiance that filled every corridor, every room, every heart. The tear in space shuddered. The Void Weavers screamed as the veil reformed, stronger than before, woven now with the will of many. And Lila stood at the center of it all, her body dissolving into light, her voice the last thread holding reality together. Below, the cadets watched, tears in their eyes, hands still joined on the stone. She was gone. But the light remained. In the days after the light faded, Xenos Prime was quiet. Not the silence of fear, but the stillness of awe. The tear in space had sealed itself, leaving only a faint shimmer in the void, like a scar that remembered pain. The whispers were gone. The shadows had vanished. Even the station's systems ran smoother, as if cleansed. Cadets moved differently now. They spoke less of rank and more of trust. Krellians shared rations with Virellans without a second thought. Humans taught Xanthari cadets earth songs. In the greenhouse dome, new plants bloomed. Flowers with silver petals that glowed faintly at night, though no one had planted them. Commander Vega stood on the observation spire one evening, looking out at the stars. Beside her stood Morgan, Dana, and Torvak. They had not left each other's side since the ritual. "She saved us," Dana said softly. "She reminded us," Vega corrected. "The power was always in us. She just showed us how to use it." Below in the reactor core chamber, the energy still pulsed with a soft white glow. Ember was gone, but his presence lingered, a warmth in the metal, a hum in the air. Engineers reported the core was more stable than ever, running on an energy source they could not measure or name. Morgan often visited the hidden chamber beneath engineering. The pedestal was cold now, the sphere gone, but the glyphs still glowed when she placed her hand on the stone. Sometimes she swore she heard a whisper. Not a voice, but a feeling, like a memory of song. Torvak had changed the most. He no longer strutted through the halls. He listened, he helped. During drills, he paired with cadets he once mocked, teaching them Krellian combat stances, learning their ways in return. When asked why, he simply said, "She asked one at a time or all together. I choose all." Weeks passed. The academy resumed its rhythm, but nothing was the same. New protocols were written, not just for defense, but for unity. Every cadet now trained in cross-species communication, in shared history and the old myths that were no longer myths. The story of Lila and Ember was not recorded in official logs. It was passed hand to hand, voice to voice, like a promise. Then, one night, Morgan saw something in the sky. She was on the outer hull during a spacewalk, checking sensor arrays when she looked up. Far beyond the academy, where the stars were thickest, a new constellation had formed. 7 points of light arranged like wings in flight, with a smaller star at the center. Bright, steady, watching. She knew. Ember had not died. He had become part of the veil itself, and Lila was with him. Back inside, she told Dana and Torvak. They didn't speak. They just stood at the viewport, staring at the new stars, hands on the glass. Months later, the Galactic Coalition sent envoys to Xenos Prime. They had detected the energy surge, the anomaly, the silence that followed. They wanted answers. Vega met them in the grand amphitheater, the same place where Lila had once stood alone. "We faced a threat beyond weapons," Vega told them, "and we defeated it not with force but with unity." The envoys scoffed. "Unity does not stop void storms or quantum breaches." "Perhaps not," Vega said, "but it stops fear, and fear is what lets the darkness in." She led them to the reactor core. When they saw the white glow, felt the calm hum in the air, their skepticism wavered. "What happened here?" one envoy asked. "A guardian gave her all so we could remember who we are." The envoys left with more questions than answers, but they also left with seeds, silver-flowered seeds from the greenhouse dome given freely by cadets. They did not know it yet, but those seeds would grow on a dozen worlds, their light a quiet reminder. Life on Xenos Prime settled into a new kind of normal. Cadets still trained. Drills still ran. But now, before every exercise, they gathered in a circle, human, Krellian, Virellans, Xanthari, and more, and placed their hands together. Not to swear an oath, just to remember. One evening, during a meteor shower, Morgan stood alone in the observation spire. The sky burned with streaks of light, beautiful and fleeting. She closed her eyes and whispered, "Thank you." A warm breeze brushed her cheek, though the vents were off, and for a moment she heard it, a soft hum like a dragon's purr and a voice like starlight. "You did not need me. You only needed each other." Then it was gone, but the feeling remained. Years later, when Morgan became an instructor at the academy, she taught a new class. Not tactics, not weapons, unity studies. Her first lesson always began the same way. Once, a quiet girl walked into this academy with no name, no file, and a small creature on her wrist. When they surrounded her, she did not fight. She asked a question, one at a time or all together. And the answer, she told her students, is what saved us all. Outside, the stars watched. The new constellation shone brighter than ever, and somewhere, in the space between breaths and heartbeats, a silver-haired guardian and her dragon kept watch, not as rulers, not as warriors, but as reminders, that even in the darkest void, light returns when hands join, voices rise together, and hearts choose to stand as one. And so the legacy of Lila and Ember lived, not in monuments or records, but in every cadet who chose unity over fear, trust over suspicion, and hope over silence. The war was over, but the peace had just begun.